We spend a lot of time discussing the many terrifying monsters that lurk within the containment cells at assorted Foundation sites. Anomalies and all the effects that come with them are often difficult to understand and horrible to think about. Some are beasts who kill without mercy, others are innocent but dangerous creatures that we may never solve. However, these anomalies often hog the spotlight, allowing a lot of real, human villains to do their work in the darkness. Sure, it's scary to see a mindless monster cause destruction, and it's terrible to have some evil wraith glide through and stir up trouble, but what about when it's people like you or me pulling the strings? Is that better or worse? Suppose I'll let you decide. Hello horror heads, and welcome back to the Scariest channel on YouTube, Top 5 Scary Videos. I'm your horror host, Keegan Hughes, and today we're taking a look at the top 5 scary SCP villains within the Foundation. Before we get started, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe for more powerful people. Perfect, let's begin. Coming in at number 5, we've got Dr. West. When people lose sight of humanity in the pursuit of efficiency and cost cutting, things can go bad quickly. I'm sure if you took a look at any number of famous villains, you'd find a similar storyline. Dr. West is described as recycling at its most brutal. Overseeing a waste disposal facility used by the Foundation, he exercises power in a way that ends up making things much worse for everyone. At this facility, there are 3 sites. There's Site A for long-term anomalous waste storage, Site C for incineration of non-anomalous waste, and Site B where waste is received and processed. Many reports of strange humanoid corpses appearing at Site C cropped up over time, but Dr. West insisted that these corpses were just not processed properly. They should have been classified as anomalous, he says. When these bodies appear, they're usually removed, immersed in concrete, and then stored at Site A, but that's not the whole story. See, Dr. West also found a way to save the Foundation plenty of time and money on amnestics. He supervises the distillation of happy and good memories from recently deceased D-class subjects. They literally boil the happiness and goodness from their brain and use the distillate as an amnestic of sorts. If properly processed and combined with targeted hypnotherapy, it allows for the removal of precise memories from certain subjects. After all this stuff is boiled out of a corpse, it is sent to Site C as a non-anomalous body. And that's it. Nothing else should happen, or so Dr. West says. However, it seems as though this process is what causes the corpses to rise from the dead and become violent. By burning away any and all memories that make up a person's humanity, it leaves behind only misery, pain, and rage. But you can't convince Dr. West of that. Coming in at number 4, we've got the Crooked Man. While not a Foundation member himself, the Crooked Man is evasive enough to have never been contained. This means that he could be anywhere at any time, even within the Foundation itself. His efforts are largely contained within the small English community of Tembe, though. There's even a playground song that the local kids sing about him. It goes like this. There lived a crooked man who made a crooked deal. He kept a crooked cane and his catch in crooked creel. He stole a crooked child who cried a crooked squeal, and that crooked little man was broken on the wheel. Nightmarish. I feel like this is just a classic horror movie waiting to happen. So this hostile home invader sticks around Tembe and shows up every 12 years or so. His active phase lasts around 70 days during the fall and winter months. Anyone who is alone indoors after sunset may be subject to his effects. Buildings hosting his targets will undergo steady degradation of their structural integrity. They warp in all sorts of awful ways, and this warping effect extends to anything that enters said building. The deformations are immediate and severe and usually fatal. People being targeted will experience gross deformations in their body structures. Usually this takes the form of multiple compound fractures along their long bones and severely displaced vertebra. Their skin will become elastic to allow for this strange, crooked growth. This often results in them being very long or tall and very visibly gnarled. Human bodies are not meant to withstand this kind of abuse, and as such, this attention from the Crooked Man is often deadly. If we're to believe the children's song about the Crooked Man, we can only assume that he was a terrible person. He kidnapped a child, resulting in him being tortured on the wheel, likely disfiguring him. This could be the origin of the Crooked Man's crookedness. Then, after dying, he decided to take revenge on the town he was killed in by passing the crookedness on to buildings and people. My goodness, what a jerk. Coming in at number 3, we've got Harold Mayne. Speaking of jerks, here's Harold Mayne. This man is the embodiment of Slimeball, just human garbage. See, he was involved in the discovery of SCP-2982. 2982 is a mobile phone with the ability to overwrite the attributes of contacts and then manifest these changes on their actual physical person. Things like eye color, weight, sexual orientation, religious belief, mental well-being, quality and length of life, and more can all be adjusted from this phone. Having access to this, Harold Mayne could have just made himself an attractive beefcake, or maybe even given the people around him a leg up on life. But no, he had to be the absolute worst. His favorite activity is making people's lives essentially unlivable, and then extorting them when they're at their lowest. Real villain behavior, right? One particularly bad instance of this was when he crashed his car into an attractive young mother that he was interested in. After exchanging information to follow up on for insurance, he changed some of her information. Mayne gave this poor woman useless crab-like arms and demanded that she bring him all sorts of money before he even considered letting her return to normal. She couldn't work or drive or take adequate care of her child with these arms, but he kept demanding more. He even upped the ante when she brought him less than expected and threatened to give her daughter some terrible disease if she didn't comply. Worst of all, he insisted on letting her know that he could just alter all of her information and make her think that she wanted to do these things for him, but instead it's more fun to make her do everything against her will. To destroy her soul, in other words. He has plenty of people on the go too. At one point, he had no less than 5 people under his thumb, even going so far as to turn a man into an awful half-man, half-lobster abomination. There's no comfort for any of his victims, and hopefully no comfort for him wherever he ends up. Coming in at number 2, we've got Director Emerson. Often in the dead of night, I find myself asking the question, what happened to Site-13? It's a tough question, but Director Emerson has a pretty clear picture. Detailed largely in SCP-1730, we discover that Site-13 is from another universe. Somehow it made it into our world, which is how we have information on it now. It seems as though ethics are a little different over there in the other universe, less ethical. Elliot Emerson controlled this site, insisting that everyone test anomalies in cruel and unusual ways. Hell, it was so bad that even Bobble the Clown had something to say about it. Emerson was cruel in his handling of the site, and apparently quite short-sighted too. He refused to acknowledge the basis of what made something anomalous and assumed that incinerating everything would just cleanse them of their anomalies. So he continued to have his staff abuse and then destroy the creatures, turning them into a freaky goo. And of course, this goo itself was anomalous. Eventually, it was too much and the waste escaped, taking warped forms of anomalies that were once whole. It's even implied that Emerson really enjoyed watching the anomalies suffer before having them blasted to smithereens. In the entry, we learn of Director Emerson's mortuary protocol, in which he states that anomalies, even humanoid ones, are not human beings. He says that human beings fall into a category of non-anomalous life forms, and even if they appear to be human, they're strictly humanoid. He concludes by saying that they are not entitled to the same rights and privileges afforded to human beings by the Ethics Committee, which is some X-Men mutant discrimination stuff. To top it all off, Emerson also allowed a highly volatile machine known as the Thresher to continue operating. This device was known to have reality warping properties, which eventually did lead to a lot of the chaos at Site-13. In the end, he had the choice to stick around and get killed by the goo-based abominations, or to try to use the Thresher to jump into another reality. And guess what he did, the coward. And finally, at number 1, we've got Dr. Robert Montag, a true classic. There's much debate as to whether he's a hero or a villain, but I would say that the debate makes things a little clearer. He is the doctor presiding over the containment of the Scarlet King, and let's just say he employs some less than savory tactics to keep it out of our world. Somehow he developed a way to make it functionally self-containing as long as nobody messes with it or even really acknowledges it. This method is a ritual so terrible that it cannot be described, and this ritual must be carried out every 24 hours. It's so bad that the staff have to regularly be rotated out for psychological counseling. It's so rough that as soon as anyone tries to help a little girl, they are terminated. It's so nasty that medical professionals on staff are required to have not taken the Hippocratic Oath. The O5 Council put out a statement in response to the lowered morale this procedure caused. Yes, Procedure 110 Montag is as horrible as you've heard, which is why only D-Class personnel are authorized to carry it out. Yes, it does involve brutal redacted. No, putting the poor girl out of her misery is not an option. Neither is drugging her. She has to be aware of what's going on for 110 Montag to work. One final note, the Foundation does many distasteful things in the completion of our mission, but our mission is important enough that the price is one we must pay. See, I'm picking a few selected phrases out of the message, but you get the idea. It's bad news. So of course, the man who came up with this horrid procedure that tortures a child daily is a villain. But he's doing it for the good of humanity, so he says. My goodness, it is hard to imagine what would make a person act like the folks from today's list, but in the end they are people like you and me. Or at least they were. What'd you think of the list? Were you shocked to find out that some humans can be way worse than monsters? Who is the scariest villain in the Foundation in your opinion? Make sure you let me know down in the comments. Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your more carcinogenic ones from the top 5 scariest monsters from kids' cartoons. Dizzy Artemis says him from Powerpuff Girls was always scary, the red devil from Cow and Chicken. See, I specifically remember him losing teeth and bleeding from the mouth during the theme song, and that really stuck with me. Zimmer CJ says your shirt looks like the credits from Monsters Inc. Love that comparison, and now I gotta go listen to that song. You know the one. Tom Karawish says nothing from Courage the Cowardly Dog. I love me some Courage, and anything from that show would have fit super well on that list, but we'd actually talked about the show as a whole in another recent list, and I wanted to keep things fresh. Minnie Mendez 8 Brawl Stars says Supa Sanic. Gotta go fast. And Taya001 says silly cat dog is an escaped first draft of the human centipede. You're right, we do test on animals before ourselves a lot of the time. And that's all the time we have for today. Before I try to jump a mail van on a moped, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe for more villainous vindication. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.